Give it up for Aiden Devine. I'm so looking forward to the DVD extras. So we'll keep this show moving right along since we have 2 acts left and they're both outstanding. Someone asked me the other day what I thought of same-sex marriage. And I said, you know what? I'm for it, but I've never met the right man. Give it up for the right man, Dan Donnelly.
Well, I've apparently already gotten your flu germs from not both microphones, so I guess we might as well pull the trigger. It would help me stay in the country, eh? Boy, I'm really glad I'm not doing my heroin story after Aiden's really harrowing experience with those minutes. It would just be embarrassing, wouldn't even compare. So my first love actually was a boy I went to Latin camp the summer I was 14 because I was really cool as a kid. But I'm not going to be telling that story, although vero puer optimum erat, so I'm still really cool, as you can tell. Now, I'm going to tell the story of the first time my love was reciprocated, which happened shortly afterward at the tender age of 26. So, show regulars who have seen me before will know that I'm originally American. I'm an immigrant to Canada. But what you may not know is that before I moved to Canada, I actually spent 8 years living in Montreal. Yeah. And so that's where I met my first boyfriend, sort of. We met because of a really odd mistake he made, which should have been a clue to the future of the relationship, but I was young and not as wise as I am now. You see, he was actually living in Hartford, Connecticut, and sent me a message on OkCupid, not realizing that we lived in different cities 350 miles apart. But we got to talking, and eventually I decided to go down and meet him, and we eventually decided to start a long-distance relationship that actually went on for 3 years, partially because we never saw each other for more than about a week at a time, so that really helped. There were a lot of really fundamental problems with the relationship. He was not a person that I could especially rely on. He would continually make really bizarre mistakes, like visiting me in Montreal in January and not bringing a jacket. For a long time, the relationship was on its last legs. Eventually, he was the one to pull the trigger because apparently I was mean all the time. And this had nothing to do with him making bizarre mistakes, like visiting Canada in January without a jacket, or planning a gig in Hartford the night before we flew to Italy together from Montreal at 6 a.m. But this is actually not a story about our relationship, but actually the circumstances surrounding the end of our relationship, because he timed our breakup really well, because he said, Dan, I wanted you to know, before we go on this 3-week trip to Italy together, for which you bought the tickets with non-refundable air miles, that I don't think our relationship has a future. So if you don't want me to go with you, that's fine. Well, needless to say, everything was already paid for, so I thought, why the hell not? And it turns out that 3 weeks together in a foreign country is a really good way to prove that you made the right decision in breaking up. But this is actually about what was happening at home while we were gone, in a way, because it was a couple of months before the end of our relationship, a few months actually, that I met someone else who, well, let's call him my coward, because that's his name, and I don't really give a fuck about his privacy. So Mike, I met because he had posted an ad on Craigslist Personals, and let's just take a moment to say a fond farewell to Craigslist Personals. One of the very few places you could get a haircut with a happy ending. Mike had posted an ad on Craigslist saying that he was stranded at a coffee shop in my neighborhood with no place to spend the night. And it was March, and it was very cold out, and it was not a 24-hour coffee shop. And I thought that, you know, helping out homeless queer youth was a much more noble activity than sitting in my apartment and working on my dissertation like I was supposed to be doing. So I told him that he was welcome to come over. What can I say? I take in strays. That's how I got my cat. It was also the only time it worked out. So, like about 90% of homeless 20-year-olds in Montreal, Mike was working as a music blogger. And we actually had a lot of really similar interests. I was a big Joanna Newsom fan. He had made out at a party with Owen Pallett in Mile-End. He'd been to Madeira the year before, and at the time I was secretly planning to fake my death and move to the Azores, which is close. He looked a lot like Ben Whishaw, the English actor, and I kind of wanted to fuck Ben Whishaw, so that was a thing. So after he stayed over that first night, we actually saw each other fairly frequently, usually when he couldn't arrange somewhere else to stay with friends. And a few of those times he actually kind of hinted to me, not so subtly, that he might be willing to repay my generosity sexually. But look, I was 29 at the time and he was 19, and it just seemed kind of icky to me to take advantage of that situation. I know I'm such a noble person. Feel free to take an applause break for me not fucking the vulnerable homeless boy. All things considered, I thought we were becoming friends. So when it came time for my now ex and I to go on this 3-week trip to Italy, and I needed someone to cat sit for 3 weeks, I thought, aha, here is a perfect solution to my problem. I have a friend who does not have a home, and I have a cat who needs to be looked after. So why don't I give my homeless friend my home for 3 weeks while he finds something else, and he can look after my cat. And so, you know, he would look after my cat, do some watering of the plants, etc. And I thought that, you know, we hung out quite a bit. I thought that we were getting to be friends, that he was a trustworthy person. But it was a few days later, when we were in Italy, and that I was in the plenary lecture of a conference at the Accademia Gallery in Florence, when I got a text message in French. Someone had found my cat, Roy, wandering around outside in my neighborhood. So I gave them Mike's number. Eventually things got sorted out. I was upset, but it was okay. A couple days later, I got another text. Someone else had found Roy wandering outside in my neighborhood. And okay, sure, he was a little bit of an escape artist. He sometimes tried to get out the back door. But this time was really sort of over the line. I got really upset, and I really asked Mike again, please be careful when you open the back door. And the rest of the trip went on fairly uneventfully from that standpoint. It was really horrible from other standpoints, but, you know. I had a successful conference. I got to do some research, saw a really old manuscript for my dissertation that I took some photos of with my phone. It was really nice. And so when we got back to Montreal, I had left Mike my only set of keys. And so when we got in from our transatlantic flight, we got to the door and we had to knock. No response. I called him. No response. I texted him. No response. I called again. No response. But we kept knocking at the door and it seemed like we could hear water running. And it turned out he had been in the shower. So he answered the door in a towel, which was a fairly nice view that distracted for just a moment from the really distressing view right behind. The apartment looked like a party bomb had gone off. And let me tell you, I am not an especially conscientious housekeeper. I could be on an episode of Hoarders if the theme was dust and cat hair, right? But this was bad. even by my standards. There were half-empty bottles of booze everywhere, objects in disarray. My crystal pitcher was broken on the counter, shards of glass everywhere. The kitchen was a disaster. My nonstick pan had been ruined. There were eggs strewn about on the stove for some reason. The floor was sticky, but worst of all, there was a persistent and oppressive smell of cat urine. Oh. My cat Roy, who was a wonderful roommate, is trained to use the toilet. And he has successfully done that every day of his life since he was trained, except for one day, and that was the day he got neutered. And I felt like I sort of deserved to get my bed peed in that day, right? But Roy had peed the bed, which was one thing. But Mike, in his wisdom, had taken all of the sheets off the bed, including the waterproof mattress protector, stuffed them in my laundry bag, left them on the balcony, and then allowed Roy to pee the mattress. Nice. So, needless to say, we were kind of upset. Jeffrey and I getting back from this transatlantic flight, totally exhausted seeing this disaster in the apartment. So we start doing emergency laundry in the basement. By the time we get back upstairs, Mike has fled, right, like a coward. Snuck out of the room, snuck out of the building, leaving only a garment bag with a suit in it hanging on a curtain rod in my living room, which about 15 minutes later came crashing down, breaking a lamp to add insult to injury. So I was upset. I texted him, called him, no response. Seemingly he was out of my life, even though he had left a bunch of shit in my apartment. So I guess that chapter was over, except, lo and behold, a week later, Mike shows up out of nowhere, not having called first, knocking on my door while I'm in the middle of cooking dinner. So I let him in and I confront him a little bit about the damage he had done and how I felt he had taken advantage of my generosity. And he was not especially apologetic. He thought I was being unreasonable, and while my back was turned to get the risotto off the stove, he left again, like a coward. And it was only a few minutes later, I realized I couldn't find my phone. Yes. As his parting gift to me, or what I guess is something like an anti-gift, he had taken my cell phone. So I got immediately on the computer and opened up the Track My Phone app and watched him walking away with it. So I immediately started texting him from my computer, and he denied everything. And I said, I can see you walking away with it right now, at which point the signal disappeared because he turned the phone off. Now remember how I said I had photographed a 500-year-old manuscript on my phone while I was in Italy? Those pictures were still on my phone. So I sent him an email. I said, look, I have really important photos on that phone. I don't even care that you stole it. You can have it, just send me the goddamn photos. He refused. So I threatened to get the police involved, at which point he counter-threatened to say if I got in touch with the police, he would tell the police that I was growing illegal drugs on my balcony, which was entirely true. I had a whole kiddie pool full of opium poppies on my balcony that all died because he didn't water them all summer. So there was no evidence. So I went to the police, and they took statements from both of us. But here's the interesting thing, is when I got my new phone, I installed the gay dating app Grindr, which is location-based, right? And lo and behold, there was a new face on the app. Yes, Mike had installed Grindr on my old phone and was living somewhere else in the neighborhood. So I was able to use the location function to track him down, as you were explicitly forbidden to do in the licensing agreement because it is officially stalking. And I get down to a row of apartments that are about probably a kilometer away from my apartment, and I just start knocking on doors. Portuguese lawyer? No, probably not. Older Quebecois couple? No. Strung out 20-year-old Anglo girl? Probably. But she denies knowing Mike, so okay, fine. All my evidence, I go to the police, I give them the address of where I think he's staying, I give them, for identification, a prescription bottle for chlamydia that he had left in my apartment. dodged a bullet with that one, because it turns out he was running a brothel out of my bedroom the whole time I was gone. And look, I am not anti-sex work. It's the only way people like me get to sleep with hot people. But still, if the cat pee weren't the problem with my mattress, probably the unregistered brothel might have been. Actually, I ended up saving that mattress by dumping a whole bottle of pet deodorant in it because I couldn't afford to buy another one. But for years, literal years afterward, when I was in just the right position and shifted in the right way, I would get just the faintest whiff of ammonia, and it would bring everything rushing back. Everything rushing back. A Proustian reminder that no good deed goes unpunished. Thanks very much.